आगे करने के लिए भी Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Dr. Vikramdeep Monga, working as a professor and head in the Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry at ISO College of Pharmacy, Muga. So today, I'm going to talk about the 12 principles of green chemistry, and I'm going to discuss them in brief. So, what is green chemistry? Green chemistry is the utilization of a set of principles that reduces or eliminates the use and generation of hazardous substances in the design, manufacture, and application of chemical products. Or we can say that green chemistry is the design of chemical products and processes that reduce or eliminate the use or generation of hazardous substances. So in short, it put its major emphasis that how one can avoid or eliminate the use and generation of the hazardous substances. So during the manufacture of a chemical substance, and it also put its major emphasis on the minimization or elimination of the waste generation. So green chemistry, it is all about reducing or preventing the generation of waste, reducing the utilization of materials, avoiding the hazards, risk, energy, and the cost factor which is associated with the process. Now, why do we need green chemistry? As all we know that the chemistry plays one of the very prominent role in our day-to-day lives. Chemical developments also bring new environment problems and harmful, unexpected side effects, which result in the need for the greener chemical products production. As we know that day to day, lot of chemicals they have been discussed, they have been discovered, and one has to explore the routes or generate the routes by which those chemical substances can be synthesized. Earlier in the R&D stage, it is the amount of the substance which matters so that one can go for the testing and its availability as soon as possible. But as the chemical progresses to the phase 2 or phase 3, one needs the bulk amount of that particular chemical under investigation. So the various routes which are present, one has to be selected where there is going to be the minimum hazards, which is going to have the minimum number of steps, is going to have the maximum yield, and it is going to be cost effective. Now, a very prominent example I will take here is the pesticide DDT, which has been produced, and you know that all of we are aware of that this chemical, because of its water solubility, it has the ability to leach from the soil into the groundwater, and then it can get entry into the humans. And so green chemistry, it looks at the pollution prevention on the molecular scale and is an extremely important area of chemistry due to the importance of chemistry in our world today. It supports the invention of more environmentally friendly chemical processes which reduce or even eliminate the generation of hazardous substances. So this program works closely with the 12 principles of green chemistry. So initially, in order to support the idea or the concept of green chemistry, the 12 principle has been proposed, and these 12 principles, they've found the basic foundation of the green chemistry. So if we briefly look at these 12 principles, so these are talk about the slide shows the 12 principle, which is the prevention, atom economy, less hazardous chemical synthesis, designing safer chemicals, safer solvents, energy efficiency, renewable feedstocks, reducing derivatization, catalysis, design for degradation, real-time analysis, and inherently safer chemistry for accidental prevention. So this is in brief what are the 12 principle. And now I'm going to discuss these 12 principle in a bit detail so that uh, I can able to provide the what these 12 principle information related to that. So first principle, it talk about the prevention. So it is the heart and the soul of the green chemistry, and it says that wherever possible, it is one can prevent the waste rather than to generate the waste, or rather than to thinking about the treatment or cleanup of the waste. So this is going to be one of the very good efficacy if one can able to design the process, design the chemical route which are more safer, which are better, right, which are going to have the no generation of the waste. So that is going to be very, very, very effective in terms of the cost also, and in terms of the regulatory guidelines also. So well, this particular, I would like to share a case study here. You can all are aware of this environmental disaster which happened years back related to the Love Canal in the New York City of the USA, where a chemical and a plastic company, they used an old canal for dumping of their chemicals in the 1930 to 1950. So later on, this land was used for a building of a new school as well as for the housing colonies. A chemical, unfortunately, it is leaked through a clay clap that sealed the dump. So then it contaminated with at least 82 other chemicals, among which benzene and hydrocarbons and dioxins, they are the prominent one. So this in turn leads to the disastrous effects in the people which are living in the nearby area, and the impact is so high that birth it leads to the ingenital, or we can say that the birth defect in the newborn babies. Those babies, they have the seizure inducing nervous system which is not working properly. So these are the some severe drawbacks, or some of the severe, we can say that the outcome of this particular toxicity which has happened, and a lot of lives has to pay the penalty just for doing the nothing. So if the things not has to been controlled properly, if they have been not managed properly, if this waste generation can be avoided, and it, or if at all it is going to be generated, it is going to be handled properly as per the strict guidelines of the regulatory agency, one can avoid these particular issues. The second aspect deal about the atom economy. So it says that the synthetic method should be designed to maximize the incorporation of all the materials which are used in the process to get the final product. Now I'm going to share this one particular example with you. You can see that here we are going to have the styrene, and it is subjected to the epoxidation by using metachloroperbenzoic acid, and one is going to get the epoxide as the product, and this conversion is quantitative and nearly 100%. And if we look at the old formula, it says that whatever you are going to have the actual yield reported by divided by the theoretical multiplied by 100, so that is going to give you the percent yield of the reaction. But is this really the picture? No, this particular formula lacks so many things. Most important information is missing, like what are the co-products which are generated in the process, how much is the amount, is the waste is benign, are the co-products benign or usable, what is the energy requirement of the process, how many purification steps are needed, what are the solvent requirement, and if any catalyst is required or not, and if so, whether it is stoichiometric or catalytic. So if we are going to balance this equation, so that is just a tradition. We are looking at the yield when we are looking at only single product. But if we look at the complete equation, so you know that this chlorobenzoic acid is going to formed as the side product. Now, atom economy, it focus upon this the formula, and it talk about the formula weight of the atoms which is utilized divided by the formula weight of all the reactants, and it has to taken care into the consideration the balanced chemical equation. It focus on all the reagents which are utilized in the process, what is the stoichiometry in which these reactants are going to be used, how efficient is the reaction actually in the practice, and what are the solvent and energy requirement of the process. So this complete chemical equation, if we look at, so you can see that even if we assume that the epoxide product is going to obtain in the 100% yield in terms of the atom economy, and we also took into account the byproduct which is called as chlorobenzoic acid which is generated, that is also again 100%. So if we fully concentrate our we can say that attention in terms of the product, so the atom economy of this process is only 23%, because only one of the atom of the oxygen from the oxidizing agent has been incorporated into the styrene, and thus giving us the epoxide product. So rest 77% is the waste which one do not want. So there one has to pay the attention. So in this particular case, the reactions which are highly atom economic, where all the reactant molecules, they have been reacted or they are incorporated to get the product, they are highly atom economical. For example, the addition reactions. So a classical example related to this, I'm going to share the synthesis of ibuprofen. So this is the older process which I have represented in front of you, where the isopropyl benzene was used as a starting material, and it yields overall 6 steps, so as to get the final product, what we can say that the ibuprofen. So a new method has been, new process has been developed, and you can see that this is the Hochst route for the ibuprofen, and it only need the 3 steps: acetylation, reduction, followed by the carbonization to get the final compound. So it reduces the overall number of steps. It reduces the consumption, the use of the chemicals. So it makes the process highly atom economical and highly cost effective as compared to the previous reaction. And that's what is required. The next principle talk about the hazardous chemical synthesis, and it says that whenever possible in practice, synthetic methodologies they should be designed in a way so as to use and generate these substances that possess little or no toxicity to human health and to the environment. So again, I'm going to share one example with you. You can see that this is the classical process for the synthesis of the polycarbonate, which is one of the material polymer used in the industry as well as in the other area. So previous process, it is called as phosgene process, which utilize the uses of the phosgene, and which is one of the highly toxic chemical substance having the ability to causes the cancer also, and it is very corrosive. Secondly, this particular process required very large amount of dichloromethane as a solvent, which is one of the, we can say that not of the required solvent in terms of its use. And lastly, the product which is obtained, it is contaminated with the chloride impurities. So this is the another solid state process which has been developed for the synthesis of the same chemical, and this particular process utilizes diphenyl carbonate, which in turn derives from the carbon monoxide which is abundant in the atmosphere. So thereby it prevent the use of phosgene as well as dichloromethane, which are one of the harmful, toxic and corrosive chemicals. So you are avoiding, thereby you are making the route more greener and safer for the workers and to the others who are working on the synthesis of the polycarbonates. And secondly, the polycarbonates which are obtained, they are of higher quality in terms of the contamination, which is avoided, which is one of the major limitation of the previous route. Design of the safer chemical is the fourth principle, which says that the chemical product should be designed so as to preserve the efficacy of the function while reducing the toxicity. So in this particular case, again, I'm going to share the one of the old case history, which is of the antifoliants, also called as marine pesticides. So previously what happened, that the design of the safer chemical, it says that antifoliants are generally dispersed in the paint as it is applied to the hull. Organotin compounds, they have been traditionally used, particularly tributylene oxide. TBTO, it works by gradually leaching from the hull, killing the fooling organisms in the surrounding area. TBTO and other organotin they have the long half-lives in the environment, which is one of the very bad characteristic. So they also bioconcentrate in the marine organisms. The concentration of TBTO being 104 times more greater than in the surrounding water. Organotin compounds are chronically toxic to the marine life, and they can enter the food chain, and hence they are bioaccumulative. Design safer chemicals, it says that. So in this particular aspect, Rom and Haas company, they have won the Presidential Green Chemistry Award in 1996 for the design of the alternative and safe chemical, which is isozoline based compound. And you can see the structure of this alternative compound, which is used as one of the safer antifoulant as compared to the previous one, and it is abbreviated as DCOI. Now this C9, it works by maintaining the hostile environment for the marine organisms. So when organism attached to the hull, the proteins at the point of the attachment with the hull, they react with the DCOI. So this reaction with the DCOI prevent the use of these protein for other metabolic processes. The organism thus detaches itself and searches for a more hospitable surface on which to grow. So only organisms which are attached to the hull of the ship, they are exposed to the toxic effect of this particular chemical. So which is one of the good example, because the previously organotin compound, they leach into the marine water, thereby causing the potential toxicity to them. So this compound is readily biodegradable once it is leached from the ship, and thereby it does not persist into the environment for the long, which is one of the very advantageous in terms of the marine or the aquatic life. Safer solvent and auxiliaries, the use of auxiliary substances such as solvents, separating agent, that should be made minimal or unnecessary whenever possible and whenever used innocuous. So one of the very good example I would like to share, you can see here I have shown a solvent-free reaction where both the reactants A and B, reaction between an aldehyde and amine, that react to form a imine. So that imine is formed in the quantitative yield. Previously, in order to carry out this reaction, one has to use the solvent such as ethanol and in the presence of a acid catalysis. But one can simply forget out that this reaction can also take place, by just grinding the two reactants and grind them properly, so thereby avoiding the use of the solvent and the other substances, thereby making the process more economic and greener. So safer solvents, it talks about if possible, you replace the hazardous solvent with the safer one. If possible, one is going to use water as a solvent. New solvents, which such as ionic liquor and the supercritical fluids, they are much more efficient as compared to the, or much more safer as compared to the conventional solvents such as carbon tetrachloride, benzene, etc., which are having hazardous issues associated with their use. So here I'm going to show the slide. It shows the list of the some of the preferred, usable and undesirable solvents. So you can see that water, acetone, ethanol, etc. are the preferred solvent. You can also use heptane, toluene, isooctane, etc. But the solvents such as ether, dichloromethane, chloroform, benzene, carbon tetrachloride, etc., they are the undesirable, and wherever possible, their use can be prevented from the reaction. The reason being, either these solvents have very low boiling point, they have very low flash point, they are having the tendency to explode, or they have the tendency to cause carcinogenicity to the humans in terms of the exposure. So if these undesirable solvents are present, one can look for the alternative like I have shown in this slide. So hexane can be replaced with the safer heptane. One can replace DMF with the acetonitrile, benzene with the toluene, etc. Design for the energy efficiency is the another principle of the green chemistry, which says that the energy requirement should be recognized for their environmental and economical impact and should be minimized. Synthetic method should be conducted at a ambient temperature and pressure, thereby minimizing the use of the energy. So if we look at a chemical process, so there are various ways in which the energy is input to the chemical process. So it can be by means of thermal heating, it is by means of cooling, by stirring, it can be by the distillation, compression, pumping or separation. So all these ways, all these steps which are associated during the synthesis, they have the energy requirement, and that constitute the overall energy requirement of the process. So one should calculate this one, and in order to produce this energy, one have previously people are burning a lot of fossil fuels, and that in turn generate carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, which leads to the global warming. So the impact of this particular tendency is that at the one time we are consuming our fossil fuels, and secondly we are burning our atmosphere, which in turn increasing the global warming by increasing the level of carbon dioxide. So it is very, very desirable that one should look for the energy requirement of the process, and if possible, better substitute for this energy utilization, or better substitute for the process which is conducted in a thermal way, and if one can do it in by alternative way, can go for example, I would like to say here, this is the caprolactam process. Previously it was synthesized by Bachmann rearrangement, and recently this is another method which is called the photochemical process, which has been developed for the caprolactam synthesis. In this particular process, nitrosyl chloride is used, and which in turn on irradiation it gives nitrile oxide radical as well as the chloride radical. So the chain reaction become initiated, and ultimately it leads to the formation of the caprolactam, like I have shown in this particular slide. Another is the microwave chemistry, which is now getting boost in many area of organic as well as medicinal synthesis. This microwave synthesis, it utilizes the wavelength between 1 millimeter and 1 meter. The energy is more directed, and it is supplied in a much more efficient way to the reactant, thereby allowing them the reaction to proceed in a more efficient way. It has a heating rate of 10 degrees centigrade per second can be achievable. There can be a possibility of overheating, but one can avoid that by taking the proper precautions so as to avoid the explosion. Solvent-free reactions are possible, and interaction with matter characterized by the penetration depth. So there are going to be many advantages of the microwave chemistry, which allow the one to synthesize the material in a very short span of time, and it allowed the one to prevent the use of a number of chemical and solvent which one is using previously. So seventh principle talk about the use of a renewable feedstock. A raw material or a feedstock should be renewable rather than depleting whenever technically and economically practical. So in this particular case, as all of we know, that biomaterials over the period of years, they got converted to the petroleum products, which subjected to fractional distillation, and that is going to provide the large number of functionalized compound, including olefins, alkyl chlorides, which find industrial applications. and from them one can get the highly functionalized molecule as per the desire. So biomaterials, they can also be directly converted to the highly functional biomaterials by using the alternative processes. Now here I would like to talk about the polymer from the renewable sources. In this particular case, I'm going to discuss the case of polyhydroxyalkanoates. Well, these are the polyesters which are produced in the nature by numerous or microorganisms via bacterial fermentation of sugars or lipids. Fermentation of glucose, which is one of the oldest process which is used, it takes place in the presence of bacteria and propanoic acid, and the product which is produced, it is contain 5 to 20% of polyhydroxy valerate. Now this particular polyhydroxyalkanoates, they are similar to polypropylene and polyethylene, but they are biodegradable and hence they are used for the production of bioplastics. Imperial Chemical Industries developed this copolymer of butyrate and valerate and by the fermentation, and that process was named as biopol. In June 2005, US company Metabolics that received the US Presidential Green Chemistry Award for the development and commercialization of a cost-affecting method for the production of polyhydroxyalkanoates. Another case I would like to highlight here, that from the renewable sources, from the waste material such as the agriculture residues, from the municipal solid waste or the paper or from the paper mill sludge, levulinic acid is one of the fine chemical which is obtained from them. And for the isolation of this particular chemical from these various waste material, presidential its green chemistry challenge award has been awarded. Now this levulinic acid, you can see it is one of the platform chemical as it is utilized or can be converted into number of the other products which find applications in the organic as well as in the other parts of the chemistry or in other industries. For example, it can be converted to butanediol, succinic acid, MTHF, in order to the gamma butyrolactone as well as to the THF. So all of these compounds, they have their applications in different fields. Another principle of the green chemistry is talks about the reducing of the derivatization. So unnecessary derivatization such as blocking group, protection, deprotection, they should be avoided, and wherever possible they are completely eliminated. So protecting groups, they are most widely used in the carbohydrate and the peptide chemistry because the function groups, they have to be very selectively react with each other, otherwise a lot of byproducts can be formed. So in order to achieve the reaction in a much more purity and to avoid the generation of byproducts, the protecting groups need to be used. So two synthetic steps are added every time whenever this protection and deprotection chemistry is going to be used, which increase the cost of the effect, and at the same time exposure to the chemical which are very corrosive or toxic, that is also a major concern. So these, because these chemicals are very hazardous, and overall yield and atom economy will also decrease it. But these protection groups are used because there is not direct way to solve the problem without them, particularly in the field of carbohydrate and peptide chemistry. But yes, if possible, one should avoid their use as much as can possible. So this particular slide shows the non-covalent derivatization related publications. Ninth principle talk about the catalysis, which says that whenever possible, the reagent should be used in catalytic amount rather than the stoichiometric amount. This slide shows the differences versus heterogeneous and homogeneous catalysis, and these are the differences. I hope all of you are very well aware of that. Now, each type of catalysis has its own unique advantages. And when we are talking about the green chemistry or talking about designing of the greener catalyst, so some of the properties of both either the heterogeneous or homogeneous catalysis, they can be planned up. For example, the ease of the separation of the catalyst, how it can be readily regenerated and recycled, low service life, very high reaction rate, robustness to the poisons, very high selectivity, and mild reaction conditions. So these are the some, we can say that the points, these are the some of the advantages of these homogeneous and heterogeneous catalysts which are exploited for the design of the green catalyst. And one very beautiful example, very good example related to this catalysis is the biocatalysis. As we know that in the human cell at a single time, lot of chemical reactions are going on, and that too also without any interference. So that is the beauty of the biocatalysis. So enzymes or the whole cell microorganisms, they are the related to the biocatalysis, and their benefits which are associated with their use, that include the fast reaction, right? Orientation of the site gives high stereoselectivity as well as the high stereospecificity. Substrate specificity is very high because the site of the enzyme is very unique for the reaction which they catalyze in terms of their substrate as well as for the product. These are water soluble, naturally occurring. They require very moderate condition to operate, and there also a possibility of tandem reaction. So these are the very big advantages which are associated with the biocatalysis and exploration of their use in various chemical synthesis. Tenth principle talk about the design for degradation, which says that the chemical product should be designed so that at the end of their function, they do not persist in the environment and instead break down into the innocuous degradation products. So, for example, in this particular regard, there are going to be certain chemical which has a tendency to persist and which is not at all, we can say that, the desirable one. And the related example is the sulfonated detergent, which are used in the 1950 and 1960. They have tendency to form in the sewage plants, in the river and the streams, and they persist for a longer period of time because they are not degraded due to the presence of the alkyl chain. Then later on, the modification was done, and these alkyl chains are replaced with the alkenyl chains, which have a tendency to modify to undergo the chemical reaction, and hence that increase their degradation. Chlorofluorocarbons is the very another example of the persistence of the chemical into the environment and thereby creating a very huge amount of environmental toxicity and hence problem to the mankind. DDT, which has bioaccumulate and causes thinning of the eggshells, everyone is aware of. Another example is the polylactic acid, which is concerned with the degraded polymers. You can say that it is manufactured from the renewable resources, corn or wheat, etc. It uses only 20 to 50% of the fewer fossil fuels than the conventional plastics, and polylactic acid products, they can be recycled as well as decomposed. So that is the advantage of this particular polymer over the plastics. One should go for the real-time analysis for the pollution prevention. Nowadays, analytical methodologies, they need to be developed to allow for the real-time in-process monitoring and the control prior to the formation of the hazardous substances. Lot of progress has been take place in the field of analytical chemistry. Very strict guidelines has been appeared by the regulatory agencies, and process analytical technology called as PAT. It is one of the very much emerging science which in turn allow the real-time analysis or the monitoring of the process, so that if any incidents which is going to be occur out of control, or if the chemical process is not going as per the desired manner, so one can have a strict vision over the progress of the reaction, and at the same time it is also make sure that the things are going in a controlled manner and the transformation is taking place smoothly. So it gives us a picture that if anything goes to be not in control, one can avoid them by undergoing the real-time analysis of the process. I would like to share an example. For example, in the industry, when we talk about the bulk industry or process chemistry, exothermic reaction at an increased scale, even a small increase in the solution temperature poses a much greater problem. The reaction rate increases at the high temperature, thereby further increasing the temperature as the reaction proceeds, and hence there is a rapid increase in the reaction rate take place. So this is called a thermal runaway. So at this point, it is impossible to stop the reaction, and this may lead to the explosion. One of the notable example is in the Texas City disaster, which happened in 1947, in which a cargo ship which is containing more than 2,000 tons of ammonium nitrate, it detonated, initiating a chain reaction of additional fires and explosions in the other nearby ships, killing more than 400 people. So these incidences can be very well avoided if the things which are under control, if their proper monitoring is done, if the reaction they are allowed to proceed under the controlled way, and a proper progress of the reaction can be monitored by the use of the PAT technology. Analyzing a reaction, that is a very important step, because what do you need to know? You must know of when you are dealing with a chemical reaction, and how you are going to get this information depending upon the literature, depending upon your experience. That is very important. And how long does it take to get it? So these all the factors that has to be considered while one is working or developing a chemical process for the synthesis of a excipient or a chemical substance or a API. And for this one has to undergo very thorough understanding of the reaction on a small scale, on a pilot scale, on a bulk scale, and a lot of branches such as process chemists, organic chemists, engineers, they work in as a one team so that the chemical process can be developed, which is very robust. The nature of the process as the scale of the reaction changes can be predicted in a very small and in an efficient way so that the hazardous incidents can be avoided. Inherently safer chemistry for accidental prevention, that is the 12th principle of the green chemistry, and it says that the substances and the form of the substance, very importantly, which is going to be used in the chemical process, that should be chosen so as to minimize the potential for the chemical accidents, including the explosions, releases, and fires. In this particular context, I would like to share the Bhopal gas tragedy, which was happened in the India 1984. Very unfortunate. So this around 40 tons of the methyl isocyanate were accidentally released when a holding tank was overheated at a Union Carbide pesticide plant located in the heart of the city. Around 15,000 people died and hundreds of thousands were injured. So chemists, they try to avoid the things which explode, which light on fire, or which are air sensitive. So whenever possible, their use should be avoided, minimal or strict precautions should be taken so that such incidences can be avoided. In the real world, if we talk about when these things happen, lives are lost, as I said in this case. So on December 3, 1984, this poison gas was leaked from the Union Carbide factory, which killed thousands of people, and those who survived, their generation led to the genetical abnormalities. Even now one can see that up to 20,000 people have died because of these particular exposures, and more than 12,000, 120,000 still suffer from the ailments which are caused by the exposure. Actually, what happened? It was like that the methyl isonate, which is used to make the pesticide, was stored in large quantities on the site of the plant. It is a highly reactive and exothermic molecule. Most safety systems, they either failed or were inoperative when such type of incidents can happen. So water was released into the tank because of the system failure, and which hold the methyl isocyanate, thereby triggering a vigorous chemical reaction which leads to the release of this toxic gas, and thereby lot of people has to sacrifice their lives. So these are the 12 principle of the green chemistry. There are another 12 new principle which has been launched, but in this particular presentation, I'm going to strict my talk up to this. So green, all I want to say that green chemistry is not a solution to all the environmental problems, but the most fundamental approach to prevent the pollution and to control it at the source. I'm very hopeful you find this presentation very helpful for your work or for your knowledge. Thank you very much.